Alrighty, folks, welcome to the JVPNG Podcast, where we host local professionals of all stripes and give them a platform to offer their knowledge, wisdom, and interesting and insightful information about their industry and themselves. I am your humble host, Mr. Bo Scrooge. Thank you for checking in with us today. Also, this is our inaugural podcast, so this is our very first one. So you're here for the first one, and I appreciate that. Today is Wednesday, May the lucky 13th, and we're coming to you from the Backyard Grill in Heavenly, Houston. The time is 10 a.m. It's supposed to get up to a very balmy 89 degrees today, and it's going to be partly sunny and very humid, so you won't need to bring your umbrella, but you might need to dress lightly today. Now, our time, and the time right at this moment is 9:51 a.m. And our time and temperature segment is brought to you every week by JVPNG's very own RE/MAX of Texas Hall of Fame realtor Mark Prehoda of RE/MAX Universal. From his office in Cypress, Texas, Mark stands ready to put his over 20 years of experience to work for you to assist you in your home buying needs and makes the entire process smoother and faster than you ever thought possible. And when the deal is done, Mark actually donates $500. Let me ask, Mark, do you donate to their charity or?
I donated to the charity of their choice.
Wow. Okay, so that's to the charity of your choice. So that's a really good perk there. $500 when the deal is done to the charity of your choice. And a lot of people feel very good about that. So check him out. His office number is 281-855-4900. Very easy to remember. 281-855-4900, just like you see on the screen now. Or you can email him at mark@markprehoda.com. And speaking of which, who better to have at our very first JVPNG podcast than the aforementioned RE/MAX of Texas Hall of Fame realtor himself, Mr. Mark Prehoda. Mark, welcome to the JVPNG podcast.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Great. Glad to have you here. Okay, before we launch, how many total years have you been at this?
Actually, with RE/MAX, about 30 years now.
About 30 years with RE/MAX? Were you in realty before RE/MAX, or that was your first dip in the pool?
I was at a small office for about maybe 2 years, basically learning about real estate before I moved over into RE/MAX, because RE/MAX doesn't do as much training, but they are so much bigger than all the other real estate offices, and so to be recognized, being with RE/MAX made a big difference.
Now, you mentioned that they didn't do as much training. But did you find, 30 years in, did you find looking back that, that was kind of an advantage not having to be soaked in so much training?
Well, I got a lot of training at the small office I was at the first 2 years.
Okay, so
there was a office manager there that basically said, go out and get a buyer or get somebody who wants to list their house, come back and I'll help you with the transaction.
Okay.
And so I basically had a lifeline for everything I was doing, and it was good training for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went to RE/MAX and been with RE/MAX ever since.
Well, when you're first starting out, having a lifeline on speed dial, so to speak, must have been a pretty comforting factor there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. Alrighty, sir. Now, work history. I always ask this on podcasts because people always have very interesting work histories. It's always a kind of a circuitous path from where they were when they first started out in their adult working life versus where they are today. So if you would be so kind, sir, if you could take us to your working
I started my adult working life different than most people, because when I was 17, my mother and stepfather were both in the same mental institution, and me and my stepsisters were still going to high school until we got a knock at the door, and the sheriff said, "We're here to evict you." And I said, "What is evict?" He said, "Well, nobody's paying the rent. You can't stay here anymore." So I had to quit school and go to work. And the first thing I was doing was building apartments, construction. And I'd been doing that half days, I'd get out of school and go work.
Yeah.
And so then I just went to work full time. And at 17, I had 7 men working for me. And we were working a crew and doing things that we didn't know we weren't supposed to be able to do.
At 17?
At 17. And I did that for about 3 years and got hurt a couple of times and decided I needed a different kind of business to get into. And an opportunity came up for me to get into the bar business. And at first I was trying to be a bartender, but I learned I had a gift for being able to read the room. So it didn't take long before I got into management, and management was a lot better to me because I could read a room and read what people like and don't like, and I could spot when there was going to be problems. I could pretty much tell the atmosphere just by walking through the room.
Yeah. I want to come back to that because there's a whole lot in there, but I want to pedal all the way back to the eviction. Did it matter to? Well, are we talking about like the sheriff's department or something like that? Did it matter to them that there was 2 kids in the house? There
was 3 kids.
3. And you were telling me they came there to evict 3 kids from a home?
They were coming to evict anybody that was in the home.
Yeah, but I understand the instructions, but your kids, there weren't any special considerations made?
No.
Holy moly. Where did this take place, if you don't mind me asking? What city?
In Houston, over off of San Felipe and Fountain View, 1 street over, Nantucket is where we lived. And I had already been working construction with a good friend of mine who was my partner when we went full time, and he was living with his grandmother, and he talked her into letting me move in. And one of my stepsisters was working for a dairy over in Spring Branch, and her boss helped her get an apartment, so the 2 sisters went and lived in an apartment in Spring Branch.
And I'm just trying to picture this, man. I mean, these are, kids in school, I can't wrap my head around mom and dad in a mental institution. I can't wrap my head around that.
Well, it was kind of crazy because I was still going to school, but me and my good friend Jerry, after school, we'd go by the institution and they had a pool table in there. We'd go play pool, and they'd always have my mother on medicated. She was like out of it.
Yeah.
And my stepfather was always trying to figure out how he was going to break out of the place.
Really?
And so it was kind of a crazy time until, then they come telling us they're evicting us, and I had to go to work full time and quit going to visit because I didn't have time anymore.
I mean, you can understand, of course, how your normal 17-year-old would think just being a 17-year-old is just so much pressure with school and studies and home.
I look at 17-year-olds now, and they're just lost.
I can't imagine.
I look back and I think, I'm not sure how I did it. We just did it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. How did you stay mentally glued together and not just pop at some point? This is a crazy, crazy upbringing. I mean, that particular aspect of it.
And, it was crazy to think that my stepfather was in the hospital because he had become an alcoholic. My mother was in there because she had a nervous breakdown. And both of them had been signed in by one of their friends, and they couldn't get out unless the friend signed them out.
So I was going to ask, how is it that a 17-year-old kid amasses and runs a 10-man crew? But what you're saying right now answers the question. I mean, you just had so much mental toughness.
Well, the work we were doing was really hard work, and basically the way we built a team was by the 2 of us could do a lot of hard work ourselves.
Yeah.
And by having helpers, we could double our work. And so basically it was us doing the work and them helping us do the work.
Okay. All right, so to you it was no big deal. It was just one thing, it just kind of led to another. It wasn't anything major.
I'd been doing it part-time, and when we got evicted, I just went full-time. And when I went full-time, it took, a few months at his grandmother's house before we got into an apartment. And once we got an apartment, we were full-time from then on.
Wow. I wish I had a whole bunch of time on this podcast to get into that, man, because it's just so much there, and I want to be respectful to your schedule because I know you have a tight schedule after this. But wow, that's just kind of mind blowing to be a 17-year-old and carrying a load like that with two siblings, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was crazy times for us, and when I meet with my stepsister for years, we talk about how, it's amazing that we didn't end up on drugs or anything else because of all we were going through at that time, but we just had strong personalities that got us through it.
Yeah, strong indeed. Every business discipline, from my experience, has a customer base with a very common misconception. There's always a very, very common one or two misconceptions that prospects have about what it is that you do. So when it comes to your average Joe and Jane Schmo home buyer, before they enter into the process, what is the biggest misconception that you have to pretty much knock down before you even get out of the blocks good? What would that be?
Well, most of my business now is repeat and referral, so I don't have to run into what most agents do, where basically you have to get through the trust factor with people. And for some reason, I was able to get by that even when I was first doing the business. People trusted me because I guess the way I talked to them and the way I handled the business, they knew that I was looking after them. One of the misconceptions about the business is that we don't do a lot. And if you're a really good agent, it looks like you're not doing a lot because they don't see what you're doing. Because all the problems that come up, you don't want to talk to the client about it because you don't want to scare them and get them going through a lot of anxiety that they don't need to go through. If you can handle it and keep it smooth, it really doesn't look like we do a lot, and probably it's our own fault or my own fault in not educating them on all the things that I do. Because there's 1,000 things in a transaction that can go wrong, and you have to make sure none of them go wrong or take care of them, because there's so many problems, and you have to be experienced to know how to handle the problem. And the more experienced you are, the easier it is for you to handle the problem and make the problem look easy, whereas most of these problems would bust out a deal and with an agent that doesn't know what they're doing. Most of the time, in a transaction, to me, the hardest part of my job is dealing with the other agent, because the other agent is trying to prove to somebody how good they are and how knowledgeable they are, when most of the time they're not very knowledgeable at all. And I try to take care of my side of the transaction, but I learned early on from one of my first brokers is that if you make sure you do everything on both sides of the transaction, you won't be disappointed. In other words, do your job and the other agent's job, and you won't be disappointed. You'll get to closing. And so really, the hardest part of my job is dealing with the other agent.
The other agent.
And I'm not saying that all agents are bad, because there's a lot of good ones out there too. And when I run into a good agent that I'm dealing with, I usually make a mental note of that person, because I know that if it comes up again where I can do a transaction with them, I know I don't have to fight with them. And, it just makes the whole thing work better. I mean, the ultimate goal in every house buying or selling transaction is that basically everybody's happy with the transaction when it's over with. Nobody wants to feel like they left money on the table, and they don't want to feel like they got taken advantage of. They just want to make sure everybody is happy and the transaction goes smooth and we get to closing and it's a good closing.
Now, see, that ties back to what you said at the beginning of this, and that is, see, to a customer, they just want to proceed, they're putting their trust in an individual, and then everything works out right, so to speak.
Right.
But for you, 90% of what you're doing when you're not in their eyesight is making sure all those things are taking place. And that's why it looks like your job is easy, because they don't see 90% of it.
Right?
Right?
Sure.
Wow.
It's like back when I was doing relocation, I had people that would come in town that had anywhere from 3 to 5 days to find a house. And once I got them under contract, they'd go back where they come from, whatever state it is, and they didn't come back again until it was time to close. And so I had to handle everything in between. And so in that case, they were totally dependent on me, and all they knew about was what I'd tell them on the telephone.
Now that is not, I'm certain, that is not the average realtor. I mean, the willingness to do all that work in that type of, and couching it that way, where the client is here and you've got all of it to do, and you have a truncated timeline. I could see what some
if they're
realtors
here, basically you're helping them do what they need to do.
Yeah.
But if they're not here, I pretty much have to do everything. And they assist me, not me assisting them.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have so much repeat business now, where I actually have people that call me up and say, Mark, my kids are ready to buy a house now, will you help them too? And I say, of course.
That's a good phone call to get, by the way.
Well, sure.
Because the kids trust the parents, and the parents aren't going to turn.
I have families where I've gone everywhere from the grandparents down to the grandkids and sold them all houses.
That's when you know you've been doing it right for a long time, because they wouldn't be around if they felt like at the end of the whole thing they kind of got a short end of the stick, so to speak.
Right.
So being able to turn your kids and then your kids' kids over to the same person. Everybody wins in that scenario, Mark, because,
right.
The kids win because they know they're working with somebody they can trust, and they know they're working with somebody they can trust because dad and mom said so. Dad and mom win because they don't get egg on their face, because they can put their total trust in you that the kids aren't getting the short end of the stick. And then, of course, you win because you have another satisfied client.
Right.
It's all good.
It's all good.
All right, Mr. Mark, let's do some rapid fire real quick, okay?
Okay.
The first one is, how inspectors make realty tougher for you than it needs to be?
Because inspectors have a tendency to feel like they have to CYA, cover their ass.
Yeah.
And so they make an inspection sound a whole lot worse than what it is. They will call out a electrical plug and say it's not wire gray, but then they call it a fire hazard. And by the time a buyer hears fire hazard 5 times, they think the house is burning down, even though it's been there for 30 years.
Yeah.
It's a plug that may cost you $10, and you can put a new one in if you want, or you can just take the old one out and wire it the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It's not a big fix, but it sounds like the house is burning down. And so I always made a point, some agents never go to inspections. I always go to the inspection for that particular reason, because I want to read the buyer and see if something upsets them to where I can stop and answer their questions before the inspector goes any further.
Well, that just seems wise. I'm surprised all realtors wouldn't do that.
Their brokers tell them not to because they're afraid that they'll say something that's incorrect, and they're afraid they'll set themselves up for a lawsuit because the realtor may not know what they're talking about and say the wrong thing. I have been in the business long enough and dealt with everything to where I feel like I know the house just pretty much as well as an inspector does. And I've also at one time had a mortgage license, so I know about mortgages. And I've even actually done a closing at a title company one time where there were people from out of town, and it was raining, and we were in Humble, and they were needing to get closed, and they stuck us in a room, and it was storming outside. And we were like an hour before we finally got in the room. And when we finally got in the room, they didn't have a closer for us. So finally I looked at my buyers and said, if you don't mind, I can do the closing. So we sat down and started signing all the papers, and they kept looking in the room. They didn't know who I was. They thought I was a closer. And at the end, they finally asked me who I was, and I said, well, everything's done. You just need to notarize everything.
And that is the ultimate trust, isn't it?
Right.
Wow. And how ironic that you go out to the inspector so that they won't trip up your client.
Right.
But the broker doesn't want the realtor to go out to the inspector because they're afraid that the realtor might trip up the client.
Right.
How strange. How strange.
Well, it's even more strange now, like in the last 10 years, where people pick their agent basically on social media, or they just go with the seller's agent, hoping that agent's going to be fair with them, where most agents don't know how to work both sides of a transaction. So basically, the listing agent works for the seller and the buyer beware. Mm-hmm. And going with a agent that's on social media, that just means they know how to make themselves look good on social media. It doesn't mean they know even how to write a contract.
Right.
When I get offers on my listings, I have two highlighters. One, I highlight things that I need to talk to my seller about. The other highlighter is things that I need to talk to the other agent about because they made mistakes on the contract that may even be detrimental to their client, but I point it out to them so they can correct it before I present it to the seller. It's just a different way of doing business.
Yeah. And you got to really understand people and understand the process in order to pull that off. Now I can see why a lot of realtors don't dip their toe in that deeper water,
Well, for a lot of realtors, they get into it because they think it looks easy and they think they can BS their way through anything. And that's the wrong way. It's the wrong attitude to use with people that are purchasing something that's normally the biggest investment they ever make.
Yeah. Sir. Okay, number 2, how the internet itself makes realty tougher for you than it needs to be. What has the internet done to kind of poison the well when it comes to prospects?
Well, the worst thing the internet has done is bring in all these internet companies that are trying to take over the business. And if they succeed, it'll end up being a self-serve business. In other words, nobody will be looking out for the buyer. It'll be just self-serve. Basically, you go online, you see a house, and you say, I want to buy this one. And the internet company has a realtor write the contract, and buyer beware.
Yeah, they don't have a vested interest in that buyer.
No. And also, like the HAR MLS, we as realtors pay for that, for us to be able to put our listings on there. Mm-hmm. And then the HAR turns around and sells that to all these internet companies who build a website to look like they're a big real estate site, when really they're just pulling our listings off of the MLS. And then they strong arm us as a realtor, and basically, if I take a picture of the front of my listing and I have my sign in it, they send me an email saying that I have to remove that picture or they're going to fine me. And when they first started doing that, I was thinking, well, who cares if I have my picture in front of that house? And then I figured out it's those internet companies that don't want my sign in front of the house because they don't want them to call me. They want me to call. They want them to call the internet company so that they can sell the leads back to the realtors. So in other words, my listing goes on their site, and then they want to turn around and sell me the leads back. Nothing fair about that.
Beautiful. So, how do you overcome that?
Take care of your clients well enough that they refer you to everybody they know.
Okay. All right, so you pretty much go around that, not through it.
Right. It's hard to go through it because they are all across the country, and they're big enough that if you try to build a website, when they first started doing the internet, I spent a fortune trying to get a website that would bring in business. And I found out real quick that no matter how much you spend, then you got to turn around and get people to your site because it's like a needle in a haystack. Nobody can find your site unless you figure out a way to get them to it.
Right.
Whereas those big internet companies have enough money that they can pay and get in the top 10.
Boy. I mean, how do you beat that? How do you?
I didn't find a way to beat it.
You just stuck to your guns and took care of your customers.
Back when I was doing the relocation back in the 90s, basically I spent $2,000 a month with the Houston Chronicle to have a 4-inch by 4-inch ad in the Houston Chronicle real estate section. Mm-hmm. And I just put my picture in there and that I was a relocation specialist. And my 1-800 number was 1-800-575-MARK or 6275. Mm-hmm. And I was getting calls from all over the country. Around 2001, when the internet started going strong, all those calls just died off. Mm. And I started trying to find a way to replace that, and it was hard to do because all these internet companies, all they wanted to do was build their business and sell us websites.
Yeah.
And basically, the websites really didn't do us any good. It just, if somebody knew you and you said, here, go to my website, they could find your website, but that was it.
Right. It wasn't like it was blasted out there for lots of eyeballs to catch hold of.
Right, like Realtor.com and Homes.com and Zillow, and all those are really lead generation sites. They're not really a real estate site, they're a lead generation site. Once you sign in with them, they sell you to realtors, loan officers, movers, insurance companies, everything that has to do with a house, they sell to you as a lead.
You become their product.
Yeah.
Well, how about that? That's a heck of a business model.
Well, that's why those internet companies have gotten so big.
Yeah, they're not. This. They sound like Priceline.com or they sound like those the word escapes me, but it's a platform where you just go choose whatever cookie you want. They don't make any cookies, so to speak. It's just a hub, a place where people can go shop almost.
Right. And when they sell you as a lead, they don't sell you to one realtor. They sell you to as many realtors as want to buy that lead.
So I was going to say,
you get bombarded by realtors calling you, loan officers calling you, movers calling you, everybody.
Exactly. They have complicated the process now.
Right.
They took what was heavy lifting already and made it mammoth lifting for you.
Right.
Holy moly.
And yet they want to turn around and make it self-serve real estate. Where somebody like me with 30 years experience, they don't think they need us anymore. They don't think that our experience helps the buyer anymore.
Oh, really?
I mean, I've had buyers where I've actually talked them out of buying a house that they like because I could see things that were wrong with it. Most realtors don't do that. They basically try to sell them whatever house they want, but if I see something wrong with the house, I point it out to the buyer.
Well, I think over time they're going to get a rude awakening because ultimately people like working with people. Right. And they will pay a premium if they can sit down with Mark, eyeball to eyeball, face to face, nose to nose, toes to toes, rather than sift through this entire aquarium of stuff on the internet. I'll pull my hair out by the end of all that.
Well, it makes me wonder why people want to basically spend all their time on the internet trying to find a house and find it in the right place and find a good deal and everything when they don't pay the realtor. In most transactions, the seller's the one that pays the realtor commission, so buyers are basically getting all the experience for free.
That's interesting. All right, last rapid fire, and this one is a doozy. You've already swerved into it a little bit. How realtors themselves make life more difficult for Mark, the realtor.
Well, like I said before, the hardest part of my job is dealing with the other realtor. When you have a realtor that's trying to prove something to somebody, whether it's me or their client or whatever, they feel like they have to show why they're worth the money they're being paid. And basically they put their foot in their mouth or they screw up the transaction trying to prove to everybody how smart they are when most of the time they don't really know what they're talking about.
But don't they see that eventually? I'm just asking. Wouldn't they see that eventually and say, hey, I'm shooting myself in the foot here?
You would think they would, but I've seen realtors through the years and run into them and they keep doing the same thing and they do it wrong and, they can't help themselves. It's like I said about the electrical plug. You can either downplay it and talk about what a simple repair is, or you can build it out like, man, that house is about to burn down. You need to get $10,000 off that house.
Good point.
When that ain't going to happen on a $10 repair if you do it yourself, a $20 repair if you get a handyman.
So a realtor can feel good that they shared all this expansive knowledge they have, but at the same time, not only does it hurt you, it hurts the deal.
And it hurts their own buyer when the deal busts out.
Brilliant. All right, Mark, you said in the pre-podcast something I thought was interesting. You said that you would bust up a deal for the client's sake if that's what you thought was necessary. Elaborate on that, please.
Well, it just means that I take care of my clients as if they're family, and if I see something wrong with a deal, I'll point it out to them, and if necessary, I'll convince them to bust out of it and let them know that I'll find them another property, but not to go through with the deal because they're going to have problems down the road. When I'm working with a buyer, I want to know everything about the house because 2, 3, 4 years from now, they may want to sell it, and I'm going to have to try to sell it for them. I need to already know what's wrong with that house before I get started.
Yeah.
And so I look after, especially first-time home buyers, more than probably any agent I know, because first-time home buyers don't know anything about a house.
Yeah.
Well, I have to educate them, have the inspector, I'm there when the inspector's doing inspections, I help educate them all through the whole process.
Yeah.
Whereas most people in this process feel like they're on their own all the way through it. I'm actually with them all the way through.
I'm sure you can see how an unscrupulous realtor would be like, well, I'm not going to bust up this deal. I want this deal.
Right.
And they would push it through, and now the home buyer is
You'd be
saddled.
surprised how many agents have inspectors that will either find things that aren't there or not find anything. And I find both equally bad for the client. And I've seen it time and time again through the years, and it just dumbfounds me how they complicate the process.
Sure. I mean, they're in cahoots with each other to the detriment of the client.
Right.
What help me understand that. What sense does that make?
Trying to prove what they can do or not do, or when they want an inspector that can't find anything, they just want to make sure it doesn't bust out, and they don't go to the inspection or anything. They just say, you hired the inspector, when really they referred the inspector. But some inspectors couldn't find anything. I remember I went to an inspection one time for a buyer that it was my listing, but I was there because the buyer wasn't in town. And the inspector's idea of inspecting the attic was he went and pulled the attic door down and looked and said, yeah, there's an attic up there. And I'm thinking, he didn't look at the furnace, he didn't look at the AC, he didn't look at the rafters, he didn't look at anything in the attic. He just said, yeah, there's an attic up there.
Man, I mean, there must be some oversight. Am I being ridiculous to think there'd be some
The only oversight is when somebody files suit against the inspector for not finding something.
So that's when it comes down.
Yeah.
But then by then the homeowner is saddled with it. They're in there. They have found this out way down the road, right? And now they're looking for legal recourse.
Yeah.
I don't know how you beat that, man. I don't know how you beat that.
I know.
That's kind of a tough one. All right, brother, we're going to wrap up here. I want to wrap up with a question I sent you. This was not something we discussed in the pre-podcast, but because of the amount of years you have in the business and your commitment to the integrity and taking care of your clients, this is going to be a very good one for you to answer. But let's say that somehow or another, they call for Mark to go do a TED Talk in front of 2,000 brand new, newly minted realtors. All of them got lofty dreams of Grant Cardone type success, and they can't wait to get out there and start tearing things up. If you just had a couple of minutes on stage with them, what would you tell them to kind of smooth out their heads a little bit?
I would tell them that the first step they should take is look for a good team in whatever area they're going to be in, and go interview with that team and try to get on a team either as a buyer agent or a listing agent, so that you can learn about real estate without trying to do it on your own. I mean, basically, real estate school only teaches you how to pass the test. When I went to real estate school, literally after going to the school for 6 weeks, they had a 2-day prep course. And in that 2-day prep course, they taught you everything that's on the test. And they even said, if you see something on the test that I didn't tell you about, come back and tell me. So basically, everything you learn in real estate school, you forget before you ever do a real estate deal. So you need somebody to actually, teach you about real estate as you're doing it, because you don't learn it until you actually do it. And so when you go to some people go to a small office where it's an agent or a broker that doesn't have time to teach anything. They just say, okay, you can come to work under me and I'll help you, but all they do is help you close the deal. They don't help you on a daily basis. Whereas if you go to work on a team has a realtor that's the head of the team, but then he has people that are over listings and over buyer agents, and basically they help them through every transaction and help them learn about the business, because there's so much you got to learn, and you don't learn it in real estate school. I mean, you got to learn everything about a house. You got to learn about how people go through their mortgage process, inspections. You got to learn so much that you got to learn that nobody teaches you. You don't learn any of that in real estate school. Yeah. You have to actually get out there and be doing it to learn.
Okay, well, that makes really good sense.
And before we're done here, I guess from what I've told you so far, this is why my tagline is, I change people's lives one home at a time. And I'm proud of that.
Yeah, I've heard you say that. I've heard you say that at our meetings, and now understand the meaning behind it.
Right.
So, all right. So, Remax of Texas Hall of Fame realtor Mark Prehoda. It's been a pleasure having you in the chair today, sir. And I hope we can get together again, because there's more I wanted to get to with you. But like I said, you have a tight schedule, and I think you're a very interesting individual, and there's a lot more that people can learn from you and your experiences, not just as a realtor, but in other aspects of life. And it would be great if I can get another opportunity to sit down with you.
Sure. I'd like to learn more about you.